What stayed with me were the practices underneath. How to show up, how to be counted on, how to make room for voices and perspectives, even when those are inconvenient. We are living in crucial times, and this is a crucial time to learn about being human. We're surrounded now by tools that can do astonishing things, and AI will change much about how we learn and work. We have become very good, perhaps too good, at technical prowess, and we've not always kept pace with our human capacity to handle what we create. One gift of this moment is that it asks an older question with a new urgency. What does it mean to be human well with other people? No doubt we need technical skill, of course we will, but we will also need the human technologies, the practices by which people make life livable together, noticing, listening, telling the truth with care, asking for help and offering it, repairing harm, protecting dignity, allowing ourselves to be known and creating conditions for others to thrive. Allowing your speaker to get a drink of water. I appreciate how at Kent I've been learning these things all along. These practices were able to stay when the schedule fell away. Kent gave me, and probably each of you, both kinds of preparation. The knowledge you can study, and the know-how you can only practice. And I want to share my confidence with you that you've had precious practice in both, through the daily patterns and ways of doing things day in and day out at Kent. This is not a new appreciation crafted for our current context, but part and parcel of being human across time. In Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle offered that we become builders by building, and harpists by playing the harp. So too, we become just by doing just acts, temperate by doing temperate acts, and brave by doing brave acts. We become by doing. I think of Mr. Scott, my fifth form English teacher. I remember one day when he opened the window in exasperation and stuck his head out, calling for help in response to someone's suboptimal answer in class. That was probably better than throwing an eraser at the student, I suppose. Although we tended to think both were irreverent and funny. I don't remember the question that day or the student's answer. I do remember the feeling of being in a room where someone was paying attention to our development. That is a human technology, seeing another person clearly enough to take their growth seriously, to be impatient because you know there's more there, to create a room where young people feel their development matters. So maybe a quiet question for you. Who here saw the person you were becoming? Who challenged you because they believed there was more in you? Who paid attention closely enough that you could not entirely hide when it may have been more convenient? Your life here has been a curriculum, not only in the classrooms, but in the dining hall, in the chapel, on the river and on the fields, in the dorms, in the music practice rooms, where many things happen, but also learning.
He's a humorous
There were
speaker.
chores and meals and meetings. You've learned through friendship, friction, disappointment, repair, laughter, and loss. Kent has been teaching you these human technologies during your years here, day in and day out. I know it hasn't been easy, and that not all learning comes from a smooth process, or even one we're willing to admit to. But much of this kind of learning through experience emerges from failures and trying again and again. These essential human technologies and their learning processes often go unnamed, outside of the formal learning structures. So you may not have noticed. You may not have noticed some aspects and still notice some aspects until 10, 20, or 40 years from now, when you find yourself doing something delicate and difficult and human, and realizing that you learned how here from everyday life in this valley. Part 2. How fair upon the waking slope the promise of the morning lies. One winter, my roommate grew ill and had to leave for the rest of the year. Our room went quiet. It was lonelier still because I had injured my knee and was spending the season on the sidelines. No roommate, and for the first time, no team. The physical therapist was not the company I craved. It was the adults at Kent who pulled me through. The chaplain, Mother Army, sought me out and took me in, probably fabricating her need for babysitting so I would have a place to be of use, and adorable tiny humans to cuddle. My coaches, Tiz Mulligan and Robin Walcott, found time to take me to physical therapy and invite me to dinner. I emerged into that spring more embedded, more held, more known. That too is a human technology. The practice of finding someone before they know to ask. The practice of moving closer when life becomes too much. The practice of being a steady presence without needing to make a dramatic announcement about it. So another question for you. Who held you, metaphorically or actually, when you were not at your best? Who made this place feel a little less lonely? It's a big issue in our world. And then there was Kathy Maza. Stealth and serious, she was regularly at my side during that winter. I would come to respect her stealth even more after I healed and was back on court. One day, my mother came to a basketball game, cheering loudly. I do remember the tone of her voice, exuberant, so excited, and in her exuberance, she left behind her stash of grocery coupons. She relied on those coupons to feed our family. Miss Maza knew that. I believe this was not the typical Kent student experience. Miss Maza knew I would have complicated feelings if my classmates saw the coupons. So she handled both quietly. That's a human technology. Noticing what's actually happening, reading the room, acting in a way that protects the dignity of more than one person, perhaps without anyone having to ask. None of that was in a textbook. All of it can be learned by being in a community where it's practiced, like it was at Kent. Kent aimed to create a community where pedigree and family resources do not get the final word. From Father Sill forward, Kent has carried a commitment to shared work, shared responsibility, and shared purpose. At the time, I didn't know how much story was held in our different shoes or coats, or different vacation plans and home addresses. I treasure that Kent created an environment where those differences didn't get to decide who belonged. Kent made room for each of us to become a presence that mattered in a community of purpose, responsive not to what we had, but to what we brought. That is human technology at the scale of an institution. Maybe what surprised me most about what stayed is worth mentioning. I was a 3-sport athlete here, so I thought I would remember the trophies, the championships, or the accolades. I thought I might be haunted by the afternoon my mistake let the other team score. Okay, that one I admit still hasn't. Okay. But that's actually not what stayed. What stayed was the sound of those years. The emotional pep talk that Tiz Mulligan gave in the van on the way to a final basketball tournament with tears in her face. The day a retiring coach, the soccer coach, serenaded us as they ended their decades of coaching Kent girls and boys. and sang to us Unforgettable. Together, pounding out to the beat of we will rock you on the roof of the bus on the way back to campus after a win on the lacrosse field. What stayed, much to my surprise, was the song and the people who sang with me. Years later, in 2011, Tiz Mulligan inducted me into the Kent Athletic Hall of Fame, and the next year, I inducted her for her coaching. The coach inducts the student inducts the coach, same stage, different decades. This kind of song, cadence, that too is what stayed with me. So perhaps it will not surprise you that when I came back to stand before you, I found myself returning to the words we have sung together in this valley. Part 3. Always the valley fills with day. Always the hills of morning stand. Always, with faith more strong than they, will bear their voice from land to land. I once heard they in those lines, and as a student, I was pretty sure they was Loomis Chaffee. Honestly, about the rest of it, I'm not always convinced that my faith is stronger than these hills. But here I am, yet and still. Here are these same rocks, the same stones in the chapel. Mount Algo is where I left it. The valley still fills with mourning. The hymn did not change, but I did, and you will change too. I don't mean your personality or who you fundamentally are. I respect and think that's beautiful. I mean that over time, especially with intention, you will grow and develop. Perhaps the way that you see the world, yourself, and the people around you will shift to have ever more perspective and, very importantly, more spaciousness. That kind of growth is not automatic. We learn through experience and we have some choice. In other words, we have more say than we tend to think on an everyday basis about what we choose to do and the way that we interact. You can choose to respond, how to respond, when someone says hello when you're grumpy. Or you can cultivate that choice. Just one example. So much of who you become is built from what you practice. And much of what you practice, you get to choose, especially in the micro moments of how you interact every day. Of course, you will not choose everything. Life arrives with its own assignments, but you will choose far more than you expect where you put your time, your attention, and your ways of responding to the world. And that is no small thing. Where you put your time and attention is the quiet, daily work of becoming the person that you want to be. So practice well. Give your hours to what you actually want to become good at. And be careful of the story the world will tell you about what that should be. The world is fluent in more, better, faster. It will offer you a definition of good as acquisition, power, status, as the mark of a life well lived. Some of that will be useful. None of it will be enough. There's a myth from my year in graduating at Kent, which I really don't know if it's true or if it's a myth. But people say that in the year that we graduated, a family gifted to their child a car, a very nice car, fine, and they brought it to campus for graduation and parked it on the river. Not exactly the Kent way to kind of show with ostentatious moves some of what we have. And so the myth is that by divine intervention, during this very ceremony, it slid into the river. So sometimes the universe helps us be the people we want to be. No tool and no amount of time will ever do for you what a community of people who know your name and with whom you've practiced becoming can do. You've spent your years here practicing the harder, quieter human technologies, how to pay attention, how to be known, how to stay in difficult conversation, how to move closer when someone needs you. Those are choices. Keep choosing the ones that you want. Kent is here at the beginning of your launch into the world, but it is not only behind you, it is also within you. It will keep you company in ways you may not